But the great unifier is saying that all those are vaxxed are mad at those that aren't. So this is not true. It's all there to just gin up more animosity and cause division. Basically, he said the unvaxxed are the new terrorists. That's what he did. Like, he showed more anger towards that 80 million, this amorphous 80 million that he actually won't specify what constitutes the 80 million, which is kind of interesting. But he showed more anger towards them than the orderly and kind Taliban, right? The very business, like, he also lied. He lied so much. And he was, basically this whole thing was he was blowing his own horn because he blew it in Afghanistan. This was his way to show that maybe he is competent. So he had to gin up the fear. It was an interesting little game of saying everything's great, but it could just totally go to hell in a minute.
And so it wouldn't be my fault.
And it wouldn't be my fault. It's these other people's faults. And then he's comparing the past, like before he got there to now. People have to remember, this is a guy that said, don't trust the vaccines.
Yep.
That's the guy. The same guy who said that is now saying people who say that are publicly dangerous or endangering public health.
The mass revolt has begun. Americans are rising up and rebelling against Biden's vaccine tyranny. In this video, we're going to take a look at the unprecedented mandates issued by Biden. We're going to take a look at the growing backlash against those mandates all across the nation. And stick with me to the very end of this video where we're going to answer the fundamental question that millions are asking. How the hell did we get here? You're not going to want to miss this. Greetings, everyone. Dr. Steve here with you. Great to be with you. As always, I am your daily fake news antidote. As each and every day, I provide patriotic analysis to help you to think better so you can feel better in these crazy and turbulent times. If you haven't already done so, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. Before we begin, if you're looking to lose a few lbs, you're going to love Keto Elevate. If you want the benefits of elevated ketone levels, but without having to actually do the difficult parts of the keto diet, like cutting the carbs and breads and the like, you're going to want Keto Elevate. I use it myself. Tastes great. Curbs my appetite for hours. And if you click on that link below, you can get your very first shipment of Keto Elevate on its way to you right now at a whopping 51% off the regular price. So don't wait. Click on that link below right now and reap the rewards that Keto Elevate can bring to your life today. All right, gang, let's dive right in here. As I'm sure you know by now, Joe Biden, the very same Joe Biden who humiliated the nation before the entire world and allowing Afghanistan to be retaken by the Taliban in what many consider to be the worst foreign policy disaster in the history of our nation. That very same Joe Biden, who couldn't competently orchestrate a troop withdrawal, has now arrogated to himself sweeping powers to mandate the vaccinations of tens of millions of people. In what appears to be a rather obvious wag the dog moment for Biden trying to distract Americans from his embarrassing crisis of competency at Kabul, Biden's announcement yesterday involves audaciously unprecedented dictates that will require mandated vaccines for all federal employees and contractors. It invokes the Department of Labor via OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, that is now ordering businesses with more than 100 employees to not merely vaccinate their employees, but to actually fire the ones that don't get vaccinated. So if you own a business that employs more than 100 people, Biden just dictated to you who you have to fire. And of course, the sweeping mandates dictate that all healthcare facilities across the nation must be 100% vaccinated. The announcement was simply breathtaking in its hubris and its scope, and even the language that he used was rather astonishing, with Biden saying, quote, "We've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin, and your refusal to get vaccinated has cost all of us." And so once again, you're at fault. Biden made that very clear yesterday. You are the problem. It's not him. It's not his competence or lack of capability. No, the problem is you. And then perhaps most astonishingly, Biden admitted, quote, "This is not about freedom or personal choice. Instead, this is about protection." Quote, "It's about protecting yourself and those around you, the people you work with, the people you care about, the people you love. My job as president is to protect all Americans." Well, that's very interesting, isn't it? Especially considering the fact that the millions of illegal immigrants that continue to pour over the southern border are exempt from this mandate. I wonder why that is. We all know the answer to that. In fact, we've already answered it. The reason why illegal immigrants are exempt is because they are not the problem, you are. It's called resentment politics, where the permanent political class deliberately scapegoats a segment of our population to shield themselves from any blame or culpability. You, not Bumblin' Biden, not Pelosi or Schumer or Psaki, not General Milley. No, you are the problem. You are the cause of all this misfortune that currently plagues our nation. Needless to say, the backlash against Biden's dictates was immediate and absolutely fierce. Republicans on Capitol Hill have unanimously denounced the mandate as shockingly unconstitutional, particularly the notion that the Department of Labor through OSHA can somehow mandate to employers who they have to fire. Almost immediately, hashtag Dictator Biden began trending on Twitter. Republican governors across the nation have announced that they will not be complying with this utterly ridiculous executive overreach. The Republican National Committee has also announced they are suing the Biden administration over all of this. And some have even gone farther. Ohio congressional candidate J.D. Vance, he is actually coming out calling for mass civil disobedience in response to Biden's mandates. Quote, do not comply with the mandates, do not pay the government fines, do not allow yourself to be bullied and controlled. Only mass civil disobedience will save us from Joe Biden's naked authoritarianism. And if you're looking for a cherry on the top of this massive backlash, if you can believe it, even the New York Times, yes, you heard that right, even the New York Times, which never ever fails to shill for all things leftist, even the Times is publishing pieces that are excoriating Biden for this unprecedented mandate. And the denunciation stems from the fact that these mandates are actually only going to make things worse in the end. The great Jordan Peterson weighed in on this, rightly saying, quote, mandating vaccines is not going to increase trust. Quite the contrary. It is instead an admission that trust has already been violated and an attempt to redress that by force. Now that's spot on. Mandates do not increase trust. They are an admission that trust has already been violated. Mandates are a substitute for trust. And has the effect of exacerbating the whole situation that in the absence of trust, the greater the force, the greater the backlash against that force. Robert Barnes rightly argues that this was actually a major miscue by the Biden administration. It's going to lead to massive litigation, as it already has. It's going to further undermine vaccine mandates. It's going to expose how testing should always be offered as an alternative to mandates. And in the end, threatening to fire people over a vaccine is really not a popular strategy. And I would add that this ironically risks splintering the Democratic Party, in that, as the Epoch Times has reported, a number of unions that are otherwise loyal to the Democrat Party have issued statements in recent weeks saying they're opposed to vaccine mandates, including some hospital workers unions, firefighters unions, and police unions. And interestingly enough, blacks, perhaps the single most loyal constituent of the Democratic Party, ironically are the least likely to be vaccinated of any racial demographic. So how did we get here? That's what a lot of people are asking today. How the hell did we get here? As one of our Insiders Club members asked last night in our live Q&A, by the way, you can join that by just clicking on the link below. You get your first week free. But I think it was our very first question of the night in our live Q&A. When did we become a communist country? There is, in fact, a discernible rationale for how we ended up here. And it's rooted in what's called a risk society. Now, it's a good term to remember. You might want to write that down. A risk society. A risk society refers to unique ways in which modern globalist societies deal with risks, with the insecurities related to potential hazards that we might face. Now, of course, every human generation has always had to face risks and potential hazards. I mean, back in the day, like back in the 18th century, traveling from Boston to Baltimore was risky, right? But here's the key. Back then, we had our religious traditions to mitigate those risks. The term goodbye is actually a contraction of the phrase God be with ye. We've always faced risks, but we had our religious traditions to mitigate those risks, trusting in divine providence to get us through. The problem with globalist-based risk societies is that they've been radically secularized, and so we no longer face risk with the assurances of our religious traditions. And so instead, what risk societies do is they turn to technology to mitigate that risk. Now, again, I need to stress here, it's not tradition versus technology. We've always utilized whatever technology was available to minimize potential hazards and risks. But risk societies are different. They're different in that because they're devoid of religious traditions, they rely radically on technology to mitigate risk. And technology always requires a class of experts that supposedly alone have the competence to operate the complexities of that technology. And so here's the key you've got to get. Risk societies believe that we are most free and that we are most protected from potential hazards and risks. We are most free when technocrats are most in control. You've got to get that. Risk societies believe that we are most free when technocrats are most in control. That is precisely what George Orwell warned us about in his astonishing 1984. That's what Aldous Huxley warned us about in his Brave New World. Risk societies tend to believe that we are most free, we are most secured from threats and hazards when we allow technocrats to have the most control over our lives. Gang, that's in effect how we got here. For decades, whether we knew it or not, our secular globalist society became a risk society. And risk societies, by definition, manage risks by technological control, which always involves submitting the masses to the control of technocrats. Now, if you're a regular to this channel, and if not, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. But if you are a regular, then you know that the good news is that we are increasingly moving away from a globalist risk society, and we're moving more and more towards a post-globalist world, a post-secular neo-traditionalist world, where technocrats are looking increasingly odd and out of place. And that's why we're seeing such a massive backlash against Biden and his clearly unconstitutional dictates. In fact, if anything, these sweeping mandates are only going to hasten that paradigm shift and move us all the more swiftly into a post-globalist world. So I would definitely take heart. Until then, these dictates are deeply unpleasant, no question. Very, very concerning. But rest assured, they are, however distressing, they are ultimately temporary and indeed ultimately futile. Now, before you go, you will definitely want to check out my latest video I just uploaded on how leftists are admitting that Joe Biden will most likely be impeached. You are not going to want to miss that drama. It's pretty awesome. So make sure to click on the link, and I will see you over there.